Okay, let's unpack this. Ever find yourself like totally on autopilot? Maybe saying good morning to, I don't know, the dog when you're out for a late night walk.
Yeah, I've done things like that. Or reaching for the razor in the evening.
Exactly. Or, yeah, trying to shave at night. It sounds funny, but get this. Some estimates suggest almost half, like nearly 50% of what we do every single day. It's habit, not conscious thought.
It's pretty wild, isn't it? Half.
Half.
And what's fascinating is just how deep those patterns get wired in. It's really, it's our brain being efficient, you know?
Right.
Automating the familiar stuff so we can focus on, well, new things. Those little autopilot moments, they really show the power these habits have.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today. We're going to explore how habits form and, maybe even more interestingly, how tech can actually be designed to, well, create them.
Yeah, and we're drawing from that source you mentioned before we started, Hooked.
Right, hooked. So why should you, our listener, care about this?
Well, look, understanding habit formation isn't just like academic theory, it's really practical. Whether you're trying to, say, build a new habit like exercising, or maybe understand why you keep checking certain apps.
Oh, yeah.
Or even if you're building products yourself, it's about understanding what makes people tick, what keeps them coming back.
Okay, so what's the plan? What are the key things we'll be hitting today?
Right. So we'll start with this idea of the habit zone, basically where frequent actions meet perceived usefulness and become automatic.
Habit zone. Got it.
Then we'll look at how products often shift, from being like vitamins, nice to haves, to becoming painkillers, things you feel you need.
Ah, the vitamin painkiller analogy. Okay.
Then triggers, both internal ones like feelings and external ones like notifications, super important.
Triggers, check.
After that, the power of variable rewards. This is a fascinating stuff, how unpredictable rewards keep us hooked. We'll talk about tribe, hunt, and self-rewards.
Variable rewards.
Okay.
Sounds intriguing.
Then, user investment. The more you put in, the harder it is to leave. Time, data, effort, all that.
Investment, right.
And finally, we kind of have to touch on the ethics, right? The whole morality piece around designing things to be habit-forming.
Yeah, definitely need to cover that. Okay, sounds like a solid roadmap. Let's start with the habit zone. What's the core idea there?
Okay, so the habit zone, think of it like a graph. You've got frequency on one axis and perceived utility, how useful you think something is, on the other.
Right.
When a behavior lands in that sweet spot of being frequent enough and seen as useful enough, it crosses a threshold. It becomes automatic, a habit.
Like checking email. For a lot of us, that's probably right in the zone. Frequent, feels useful.
Exactly. You don't really decide to check email most times. You just do it.
But the source mentioned infrequent actions, even if they're super useful, might not make it into that zone.
Precisely. Think about flossing. We all know it's good for us, high utility.
Yep, dentists love telling us.
Right. But if you only do it like once a week, probably not going to become an automatic habit. It stays a conscious choice.
Okay, that makes sense.
And interestingly, the flip side is also true. You can have really frequent actions, things you do all the time that don't actually offer a ton of real benefit, but they still become habits.
Like mindlessly scrolling social media.
That's a perfect example. Super frequent for many people, but the actual utility, debatable sometimes, yet it's habitual.
Okay, so it's that interplay, frequency and perceived value. Now, you mentioned products shifting from vitamins to painkillers. Love that analogy. What's the story there?
Yeah, it's a good way to think about how our relationship with certain products changes. They often start out as, well, vitamins, nice to haves.
Like a supplement. Might be good, but you'll survive without it.
Exactly. But then as we build routines around them, they can sort of morph into painkillers. They start to solve an itch, some kind of discomfort. And suddenly they feel essential, like something you rely on.
Can you give an example? A tech vitamin turned painkiller.
Social media is the classic one, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe you first joined Facebook or Instagram just to see what friends were up to. Kind of optional, a social vitamin.
Right? Disconnecting.
But for many, it evolves. It becomes the go-to thing when you feel bored or lonely. Or you get that FOMO fear of missing out.
FOMO.
Suddenly not checking it feels uncomfortable. It's become the painkiller for that boredom or that social anxiety itch. The absence creates a negative feeling.
Right, that feeling of being disconnected if you haven't checked your feet. Okay, let's talk more about those itches and what sets them off. The source mentioned internal and external triggers. What's the difference?
So internal triggers, they come from inside you, your thoughts, your feelings. Often they're negative emotions.
Like what?
Like feeling bored, lonely, maybe anxious, uncertain, frustrated, even that FOMO we just talked about. These feelings create a sort of internal discomfort.
An itch.
Exactly, an itch. And that itch prompts you to seek relief, often by using a particular product habitually.
So if I'm standing in line feeling bored, I might automatically pull out my phone and open a game. The boredom is the internal trigger.
Perfect example. The boredom triggers the action. Now, external triggers, those are cues from your environment.
Okay, like what?
Notifications buzzing on your phone, an email popping up, maybe a button on a website saying click here, even just seeing an app icon on your screen.
Ah, okay. The things outside of us telling us to do something.
Right. And initially, products that want to build habits often rely heavily on these external triggers to get you to act.
But I guess the goal isn't just to keep pinging people forever.
No, exactly. The real goal, according to the source, is to build a strong link, an association between the product and those internal triggers.
Oh.
So when you feel bored, the first thing that pops into your head is using that specific app or service. It becomes the default solution.
So the need for external pings fades away.
Ideally, yes. The user starts coming back on their own because the product is now tied to that internal feeling. The memory trace is formed, like the source mentioned Instagram. Feeling that pang of, oh, I might miss capturing this moment, or seeing what others captured, that feeling itself becomes the trigger to open the app.
That makes a lot of sense. The product becomes the answer to an internal state.
Okay.
It's a trigger. Then comes action. What makes an action likely to become part of that loop?
Simplicity is key here. The source really emphasizes this. For a habit to form, the action needs to be as easy as possible to perform.
Easier is better.
Way better. And this depends on two things: your motivation level at that moment and your ability to actually do the action. The easier it is, the less motivation you need.
Okay, and what factors influence that ability or simplicity?
The source breaks it down into 6 things. Time, how long does it take? Money, does it cost anything? Physical effort, how much work is it?
Right.
Brain cycles, how much thinking does it require? Social deviance, is it weird to do this in public? And non-routineness, does it mess up your existing flow?
Wow, okay. So lots of dimensions to simplicity.
Yeah. The less friction across those 6 factors, the more likely you are to do it, especially when motivation might be low.
So quick, free, easy, requires little thought, socially normal, fits your routine.
Yeah.
That's the sweet spot for action.
Yeah.
What about motivation? That's got to be important too.
Oh, absolutely. Ability isn't enough on its own. The source brings in BJ Fogg's core motivators. These are like fundamental human drives.
Okay.
Things like seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, seeking hope, avoiding fear, seeking social acceptance, avoiding rejection. These are deep-seated.
Primal stuff.
Pretty much. And if an action taps into one of these core motivators, you're naturally more driven to do it. Think about advertising. It plays on these all the time.
Exactly. Hope in a bottle, fear of missing out. Yeah. So make the action easy and connect it to a core desire. The source also mentioned cognitive biases. How do they fit in?
Right, biases. These are like mental shortcuts, heuristics our brain uses. They help us make quick decisions, but they're not always, let's say, perfectly rational. And they can be leveraged to encourage action. The source highlights a couple. One is the scarcity effect.
Ah, limited time offer.
Exactly. We tend to value things more if we think they're rare or hard to get. Only 3 left in stock. That creates urgency. And part of that is loss aversion. We hate losing out more than we like gaining something.
Right. Don't want to miss the deal. What other bias was mentioned?
The endowed progress effect. This is interesting. We're more motivated to finish something if we feel like we've already made some progress.
Like a head start.
Yeah. The classic example, which the source uses, is the coffee shop punch card. If they give you a card that already has, say, 2 stamps on it out of 10.
Oh, I'm already 20% there.
Exactly. You feel invested, like you've got momentum. You're much more likely to keep buying coffee to get that free one compared to starting with a blank card.
That's clever. A little psychological nudge.
Ah.
Okay, so how does this all translate into designing tech? Making things easy, tapping motivation, using biases.
It's all about reducing friction, making the path to action incredibly smooth. The source gives some great examples. Think about Facebook login.
Oh yeah, use that everywhere.
Right. It drastically simplifies signing up for new apps or websites. Instead of filling out forms, you click one button, boom, less time, less brain power, huge reduction in friction.
Totally. What else?
Well, think about Google search back in the day compared to like Yahoo or Lycos or Alta Vista. Remember those?
Oh man, yeah. Cluttered. So much stuff on the page.
Right. Google's genius was that clean, simple interface, just the search box. They made the core action searching incredibly easy and fast.
Wow.
Removed all the distractions. That's friction reduction.
Big time.
Another one, the source mentions Apple making the iPhone camera accessible right from the lock screen. Just a swipe.
Yeah, quick draw for photos.
Massively reduced the steps needed, made it the default for capturing spontaneous moments because it was just so easy.
Those are great examples.
Yeah.
Small design choices, huge impact on behavior. Okay, trigger, action. What's next in the loop?
Variable reward. This is where the magic or maybe the stickiness really happens.
Variable, meaning unpredictable.
Exactly. Predictable rewards, they get boring, you know what's coming. But variable rewards where you don't know exactly what you'll get or when or how good it will be, that fires up the dopamine system in our brains. It creates anticipation, craving.
Like playing a slot machine.
Okay,
You never know if the next pull is the jackpot.
Precisely. The source makes that connection, that uncertainty, that variability keeps us engaged, keeps us pulling the lever or scrolling the feed or checking the app. We're wired to seek rewards, and variability supercharges that seeking behavior.
Okay, so it's the unpredictability. The source broke these down into types, right?
Yeah, 3 main types: rewards of the tribe, rewards of the hunt, and rewards of the self.
Rewards of the tribe sounds social.
Totally. It taps into our deep need for connection, acceptance, status within a group. Think likes, comments, shares, upvotes.
Social validation.
Exactly. On platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, even places like Stack Overflow with its points and badges, you post something and you wait, anticipating. Will people like it? Comment. That social feedback is a powerful variable reward. You never know exactly how much you'll get. The source even links it to Bandura's social learning goal. We see others getting rewards, and we want them to.
So that notification number, that's a potential tribal reward waiting. Okay, what about rewards of the hunt? Sounds primal.
It is. This taps into our basic drive to find resources, information. Think about early humans hunting, searching for food.
Okay.
In the digital world, it's like scrolling through Twitter or Pinterest or even news feeds. You're hunting for that interesting tidbit, that captivating photo, that valuable piece of info.
Nugget of goodness.
Right. And it's variable because you don't know what the next scroll will reveal. Maybe something amazing, maybe nothing. But the possibility keeps you hunting, scrolling, searching. That infinite scroll design, perfect reward of the hunt mechanism.
Huh. Never thought of scrolling as hunting before, but yeah, it fits. Okay, third type. Rewards of the self. What's that?
This is about intrinsic satisfaction, mastery, competence, completion, feeling capable.
Ah, like leveling up in a game.
Exactly. Or finally getting your email inbox down to 0. Or solving a puzzle. It's about achieving something, feeling a sense of control and accomplishment. The source mentions self-determination theory here, our innate need for competence and autonomy. These rewards feel good intrinsically.
That feeling of, yes, done. Okay, so tribe, hunt, self. But the source seemed to say you can't just sprinkle these in randomly, right? They need to fit.
Absolute crucial point. The rewards have to align with why the user's there in the first place. They need to scratch the user's itch, connect back to their internal trigger.
Makes sense.
The source gives an example. Mahalo tried using money, like small cash payments, on its Q&A site. Didn't work so well. But Quora, using social rewards, upvotes, status, recognition, that worked much better because people were there for intellectual validation and connection, not pocket change.
So understand the user's core motivation first. Don't just throw points at them.
Right. And also maintain their sense of autonomy. People don't like feeling manipulated or forced.
Yeah, reactants.
Exactly. The source mentions that study where adding "but you are free" to a request made people more likely to comply. Even with rewards, users need to feel they have a choice. Overly pushy apps can backfire because people feel controlled.
Like you must log your food now versus something gentler.
Precisely. That feeling of control matters. The source also talked about finite versus infinite variability. What's that about?
Right. Finite variability. Think of a single-player game with a clear ending. Once you beat it, the rewards are done, the variability is gone, it loses its pull.
Okay. Infinite variability. That's things like multiplayer games, World of Warcraft is mentioned, or social feeds or content platforms like YouTube or Dribbble. There's always new content, new interactions, new possibilities. The variability never really runs out.
So that keeps people engaged longer. Like Farmville eventually faded, maybe partly because the variability felt finite compared to something like YW.
Could be part of it, yeah. The source points out that something like email actually hits all 3 reward types. Tribe, messages from people, hunt, searching for info, and self, clearing the inbox. That might be why it's so sticky.
Huh. Email is the ultimate variable reward machine. Okay, trigger, action, variable reward.
Yeah.
What's the last piece of the hook model?
Investment. This is where you, the user, put something in.
Like effort.
Effort, yes, but also time, data, content, social capital like followers or skills you learn.
Okay, so what does that investment do?
Couple of things. First, the more you invest, the more you value the product. It's called the IKEA effect sometimes, right? You value that bookshelf more because you built it.
Huh. Yeah, or you just don't want to admit you wasted hours on it.
Right, and it makes you less likely to switch. If you've built a huge music library in iTunes or a massive network on LinkedIn, switching feels costly. You'd lose that investment.
Creates lock-in, basically.
To a degree, yes. Examples are everywhere. Your iTunes library, content, your LinkedIn profile, data, effort, your Twitter followers, social capital, learning Photoshop skill, even the Any.do app asking for calendar access. That's an anticipated investment setting things up.
Okay, so investment builds value and switching costs. The source also mentioned consistency and cognitive dissonance. How do they tie in?
We have a natural drive to be consistent. If we've invested time and effort into something, we tend to keep using it to stay consistent with our past actions.
Right.
And cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling when our actions and beliefs don't align. If you've poured hours into a service, it's uncomfortable to admit it's not actually that good, so you're motivated to keep using it to justify your past investment. The source mentions that drive carefully, sign study, a small initial commitment made people much more likely to agree to a bigger one later. Consistency.
Fascinating how our own psychology keeps us hooked. Now, investment also loads the next trigger. What does that mean?
It means the investment phase often sets up the next cycle of the hook. It creates the trigger for your next visit.
Ah.
Think about the Any.do calendar example again. You invest by linking your calendar. That investment then allows the app to trigger you later with a notification after a meeting, prompting you to come back and add tasks.
Ah, okay. The investment enables a future trigger.
Exactly. Or even Tinder's swipe. That quick investment swipe right loads the potential next trigger. Getting a match notification, which brings you back to the app. It closes the loop and starts it again.
So it's a self-perpetuating cycle. Trigger, action, reward, investment, leading to the next trigger.
That's the model, yeah.
Okay, now, designing things this way to intentionally build habits, it feels powerful. Which brings us to the ethics part.
Yeah, it's a really important conversation to have, especially now with tech being so ubiquitous, right? Always on, always connected.
The potential for manipulation or even addiction seems higher.
It does. The source quotes Paul Graham saying, "Society hasn't built up the antibodies yet to deal with these potentially addictive technologies. It's relatively new territory."
So how can creators think about this responsibly? The source mentioned a manipulation matrix.
Right. It's a framework for thinking about the ethics. It asks two questions about a product. One, would the creator use it themselves? And two, does it materially improve the user's life?
Okay, so two axes.
Yeah. Ideally, you want to be in the facilitator quadrant. That means you, the creator, would use the product, and you believe it genuinely helps people. You're facilitating healthy habits they already want.
Like maybe a fitness app that helps you stick to goals you set yourself.
Potentially, yes. If it's done well and the creator believes in it. The source contrasts this with the peddler.
The peddler.
That's someone building something they wouldn't use themselves, possibly because they know it's manipulative or harmful, but they know it hooks people, often for profit. They don't really care if it improves lives.
So facilitator good, peddler bad. What about examples?
Well, the source suggests maybe the founders of Facebook or Twitter see themselves as facilitators, believing their platforms connect people and improve lives, and presumably they use them too.
Okay. Subjective maybe, but that's the quadrant.
Right. And then there are clear facilitator examples like Nir International, mentioned in the source, where the founder deeply understood the user's needs, farmers in poverty, and built solutions they themselves would rely on in that situation.
And peddler examples.
The source mentions things like maybe some casino apps, or potentially even some poorly designed gamification in areas like fitness or charity apps if they just exploit psychological tricks without offering real value or respecting user autonomy.
Tricky lines sometimes. What about addiction? Should designers worry about that?
The source acknowledges that while most users can self-regulate, designers should consider those who might develop unhealthy habits. Maybe having procedures or ways to help users manage their usage if it becomes problematic.
taking some responsibility.
Yeah. Interestingly, the source uses the YouVersion Bible app as a kind of complex case study. According to the matrix definitions, you could argue it falls into the peddler category if the creators aren't devout users themselves, but are using habit-forming techniques very effectively.
But it's the Bible.
Right. And it's incredibly popular, huge user base, massive engagement, tons of data analytics driving its design. It's extremely habit-forming, using many techniques from the hook model. But does it materially improve lives? Depends entirely on your perspective. It highlights the complexity.
Wow, yeah. That is complex. Okay, shifting slightly. For people building products, the source talked about habit testing. What's the key takeaway there?
It's basically about being realistic and specific. First, define what a devoted user actually looks like for your product, someone who's truly formed a habit.
Not just someone who signed up once.
Exactly. And second, figure out realistically how often you expect those devoted users to engage. Is it multiple times a day, like a social app? Or maybe once a week, like maybe a budgeting tool? Or even less, like a travel site?
So don't expect daily usage if you're selling, I don't know, mattresses online.
Right. You need honest benchmarks based on the nature of the problem you're solving. That's how you know if you're actually building a habit or just getting sporadic traffic.
Got it. Define the habit, measure it realistically. Finally, the source offered advice on finding opportunities to build these kinds of products. What did it suggest?
Two main things. One, look inwards. Scratch your own itch.
Like the buffer example.
Exactly. Joel Gascoigne needed a better way to schedule tweets, so he built it. Often the best ideas come from solving your own problems because you understand the need deeply.
Makes sense. What was the other angle?
Look at new technologies or interface changes. Often shifts in tech create openings for new habits. Think about when smartphones first got good cameras, or when mobile internet became fast. These changes enabled new behaviors.
Even if people dismiss them at first.
Yeah. The source reminds us that lots of huge innovations, the telephone, airplanes, personal computers, the internet itself, were initially dismissed as toys or novelties.
Yeah. Like the Kodak Brownie camera example.
Right. So pay attention to nascent behaviors, those little new things people are starting to do, often awkwardly, with new tech. They might signal a big future opportunity for a habit-forming product that makes that behavior seamless.
Look for the clumsy workarounds people are doing now. Okay, that's a great way to spot potential. So let's try and wrap this up. Quick summary of the key takeaways from Hooked.
Sure, we really dug into the hook model. Trigger the cue, internal or external. Action, the simple behavior done in anticipation of reward. Variable reward, the unpredictable payoff that creates craving, tribe, hunt, self. And investment, the user's contribution that increases value and loads the next trigger.
Right, that core loop.
We talked about the habit zone, vitamins versus painkillers, the importance of simplicity and motivation for action, reducing friction, aligning rewards, maintaining autonomy, and the ethics of it all, plus testing and finding opportunities.
Excellent summary. Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Now that you understand these mechanics of habit formation a bit better, how might you apply this?
Yeah, think about the products you use, the routines you have, or want to build, or maybe break.
What are the itches you're scratching every day? And are the ways you're scratching them, the apps, the services, the habits, are they actually serving you well in the long run?
It's a powerful lens to look through. And hey, if you want to go deeper, definitely check out the source, Hooked. There are exercises in there too for applying this stuff personally.
Great suggestion. Food for thought, definitely.